welcome back to the Always Reading Book Club. It is your girl Kiki Reader, and we have a new series. Yes, the decision was to do a new series. So we're going to dive into the Tangled series by Charlotte Byrd. And so our first book in the series is Tangled Up in Ice. Our story opens up with one of our main characters whose name is Jackson, and he's a billionaire, and he's kind of telling us why he hates New York City. So he lives in like a 12,000 square foot home. It has about 5 stories, views of Central Park from basically every window. And he just basically has this conflict to where he hates that he's wealthy. At the same time, he doesn't want to not have his money. So then it goes to Harley's point of view. That's our other main character. And she basically is on the other end of the spectrum. So she has a 400 square foot studio apartment that she shares with a roommate. But she loves it. And basically everything that he hates about New York City, that is what she loves about it. So Jackson goes into a little detail about the home that he bought. It was an older woman who he had bought it from for about $30 million. And he enjoyed it with his daughter for about 11 months. So clearly we know something happened. Harley lives with her friend Julie that she met at Columbia University. Julie comes from money, but when her father left her mom for his longtime girlfriend, there was like a rift in the family. And it was kind of like, whose side are you choosing? Her brother chose the father's side, and so he has this great apartment in Chelsea, whereas she chose her mom's side and she shares the studio with Harley. So Harley comes from out west. Her parents spent, most of their lives building their dreams home. I think it's in Montana. Yeah, it's Montana. And so they've pretty much, their life was dedicated to owning land, having this beautiful home. And that's pretty much what they did. It was meant for them to grow old in that house and to see their grandkids and everything, but then we find out something's happened. We don't know what just yet, but something happened. So we find out the reason that Harley no longer lives in Montana is because her parents had a son that was about 12 years younger than Harley, named Aspen. And they had only lived in the new home. So they did build the new home, but they had only been there a year when there was a fire that came through and Aspen didn't survive. And so because the father hadn't made the insurance payment for the home, there were no funds to get back. So they didn't get anything. So they did get a lot of help from the community, but it wasn't enough to rebuild. She had considered going to the University of Colorado. But after everything that had happened, she was like, I just want to get far away from here. I don't want to be anywhere near here, which is understandable. So Julie works at a bar. She makes pretty decent. And she's tried to get Harley to work there too. But Harley's like, I'm a content writer. She works from home and she's safe and she likes that. And so Harley recently, she'd had an incident where she had knocked herself out. This is so sad. But she was trying to get a mixer off of the top shelf. And she pulled it out in some kind of way. She didn't catch it and it just, boom, knocked her in the head. And she got like a concussion. And she was like bleeding from the head and everything. And she passed out. So Julie took her to the hospital. And that hospital bill was like $4,000. She doesn't have insurance. So now she's starting to get collection calls from the hospital. And she committed to a payment plan that she knows she can't pay. But, I guess she was tired of the phone calls. So Julie, her roommate, also has a boyfriend named Logan. Logan does pretty well for himself. I think he's in the finance game. I think that's what he does. And they've only been together for about 3 weeks. And he just asked her to move in. Kind of soon, but I guess they figure if it's right, it's right. To each his own. So Julie decides, at first, let me go back. Harley kind of freaked out. She kind of made it about her. she she was happy for her friend, but at the same time, she's lived with Harley since college, so this is a big adjustment for her. On top of the fact, she's got to find someone else to, come in because she cannot afford the rent by herself in that studio apartment because it's like $1,800. She can't afford that, so she's got to find someone else. So she's a little paranoid about that. But after she kind of works through those emotions, then she's happy for, she's happy for her friend. So Julie's like, you know what? Come to work with me tonight. Let's just see if you can do it. So she sucks. She's not good at this. Her and waitressing, it just doesn't work. So around 2-3 o'clock in the morning, she calls it a night. And she calls a ride share to leave. She gets in the car. And then she hears a familiar voice. And it's a guy that used to stalk her. And she thought he had stopped, but apparently he was just concocting like a whole new plan. So he tells her he's going to take her somewhere where they can be alone. And she's like, hell, like I'm stuck. I don't have a way out. There's no way because he has the door locks. Like, what is she going to do? And they keep going through green lights. So finally they run into a red light, and because it was so sudden, it like he jerked, and when he slammed on the brakes, his hand some kind of way, he unlocked the doors by mistake, and she took that opportunity and that girl jumped out. So Jackson hears like this pounding on the door and this woman screaming like, please open the door, please open the door. And so initially he doesn't want to open the door and he tells her to go away. Because Jackson's a whole recluse, So the woman, she keeps screaming. She's like, please, he's after me. Help me. And he's like, call the police. Like, wow. So she says they won't get here in time. And so that's when Jackson looks in the peephole and he sees something kind of rustling in the bushes. And then he sees a man appear and he sees the guy like drag the girl down the stairs by her hair. So then that makes him open the door. So he runs down, he punches the guy in the nose and in the gut. And then the guy tries to get away, but he trips him. And then he calls 911. So when the police get there, he's still sitting on the guy. And so he doesn't get off immediately because he's like, if he runs, these police officers are not going to be able to catch him, So he just kind of stays there. And then finally, like, he does get up and he gives him the statement, about what happened. And so he's about to have a panic attack because he doesn't come outside. This man stays in his home. And he's been doing this for like 4 years. He has not left that home. So he's like freaking out because he's around people and he's outside. So this is a lot going on top of the fact of what just happened. So this is a lot for him. And so he's about to have a whole ass panic attack. And the paramedics, they're attending to Harley. And she looks up at him and she just mouths to him, thank you. And he, of course, notices she has these beautiful hazel eyes. And, he's taken with her, and that freaks him out because he hasn't felt that way about anyone. So he rushes back inside as soon as he can. And he goes to pour himself a drink, and then he hears a knock on the door again. And it's Harley. And so he opens the door like slightly. And she thanks him again for saving her life. And he closes the door in her face. I was like, shit. So then, of course, he spends the next couple of days, he's thinking about her. And then he finds out her name, looking up the incident that happened. Because, something that big, reclusive billionaire, a whole incident outside of his home, this is going to make the news. So he's able to find her name in an article that was titled Reclusive Billionaire Saves Woman. So Jackson comes up with a way to see her again. So he puts an ad for a research job, but he doesn't hear from her. And it's been like probably a couple of weeks. So he's about to give up, and then he gets an email from her, and so he asked her to come in that day for an interview. So Harley's having the same issue thinking about Jackson as well. She was very taken with him when she saw him, because he's an attractive man. So Julie advises her, after the incident that happened, you know, maybe you need to just write, just kind of get out of your head, just write, that's what you're good at. That's what you want to do. Write your story. And so she does it, but it comes more real and not just fiction, because she starts writing about that night. She saw scars underneath Jackson's collarbone, and so now she's kind of wondering, like, what happened to him. Clearly there's a story there. So when Harley gets the email requesting an interview and the address, she automatically think like, it's okay, this is a whole ass prank, So she's pissed. But at first she thought like not to go, but then her curiosity like got the best of her. And so she stormed over there, via subway, because she's not calling a rideshare again. So she rings the doorbell, pounds on the door. Jackson opens up the door and she yells at him. And she's like, why would you do this? Like, why would you play a prank on me? And he said, I just need to see you. And of course she's like, why did you need to see me? And he just says the same thing again. He's like, I just need to see you. So then he asks her to come inside because it was like freezing cold. And he told her, she's like, you need to explain, like why I'm here. Like, what kind of joke is this? Like, what is going on? So he's like, just come inside. He's like, listen, I'll explain. I want you to understand why I was so rude that night. And I want to apologize for that. So she goes inside. He offers her a drink. Initially, she's like, no, I don't want anything. But then she decides to accept. And then Jackson tells her, how sorry he was for how he treated her. And she, of course, was like, you could have called or came to me. Like, why make up a whole fucking job, So, she's like, I really needed a job with pay like that. She's like, I should have known it was a scam, like too good to be true. And she slams the glass on the table and she does it a little too hard. And so it shatters. So now she has blood dripping from her hand. So Jackson like leaps up, goes to get a towel from the bar, and he inspects it for glass. And then he wraps her hand up. And he tells her, I got a first aid kit, in the bathroom down the hall. And she's like, don't even worry about it. I'll take care of it myself. And she's getting ready to leave. But then she kind of thought, like, that's probably not that smart to, like, walk around with a bloody hand on the subway. And they almost had a little moment where their lips were kind of closed. But she pulled away, I think. Yeah, she pulled away.